Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 352 Maintaining Your Victory Over Doubt, Part 2. How hope, trust, and reliance empower you to achieve mind regulation. The podcast objective is to reveal how the 3 degrees of faith help you achieve mind regulation at the detailed level. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. The mind barrier of hope. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to Day 103 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyze the primary illustration of faith in our lives. That is, a fence, but not just any fence, the legendary fence of faith, one of the more prominent spiritual gifts we are afforded as we travel the legendary way of holiness. Along these lines, there are 64 degrees of holiness, and each one has a primary illustration that takes on the form of a spiritual gift. Ergo, the same way faith is a fence, all the degrees of faith have a unique illustration. Like faith, the illustrations of hope, trust, and reliance are all designed to help you achieve mind regulation, a key spiritual process required for you to reign over doubt. We touched on these illustrations in prior podcasts, and yet I would like to speak to them now in a more dedicated fashion. To wit, I will reveal to you how they empower you to unlock the power of mind regulation. Let's begin by analyzing the primary illustration of hope. As you can see by the image to the right, hope is a mind barrier. Strategically, it provides additional protection around your mind. Along these lines, there is a key difference between the illustrations of faith and hope, namely the difference between a fence and a barrier. As a fence, faith regulates what enters your thought dimension. Per the image to the right, its primary role is to vet the wide range of stimuli trying to enter our minds. This is why a man of faith will never have carnal thoughts. For look, the fence of faith is designed to block carnal stimuli. And where there are no carnal stimuli, there can be no carnal thoughts. On the other hand, the mind barrier of hope does not possess the filtering power of the fence of faith. This is why it is more accurately labeled as a barrier. For a barrier, by definition, is designed to restrict access. Along these lines, hope is designed to restrict access into your mind. For if your mind is corrupted, your entire being will be corrupted. It is just a matter of time. Now, the question of the hour then is, how do stimuli enter our minds? The answer is sure. They must meet the spiritual criteria of hope. Along these lines, before any form of stimuli can enter your mind, it encounters your mind barrier of hope. Hope then vets the stimuli against its precepts. You can see these precepts by observing the table to the right. By definition, hope is continuing to believe in an outcome or a situation, although the outlook does not warrant it. And the primary objective of hope is to look forward always as we progress our quest, focusing on our prospects and not the obstacles. Therefore, if any form of stimuli attempts to enter your mind, that does not work to keep you looking forward. And if it incites you to focus on the obstacles and the potential problems, as opposed to the solution, these are rejected and your mind remains free. This, my friends, is the power of the primary illustration of hope in our quest. This, my friends, is the role that hope plays in helping you achieve mind regulation. The mental bridge of trust. Now, the same way faith is illustrated by a fence and hope is a mind barrier, trust, i.e., the focal degree of faith, is a mental bridge. We discussed this matter in great detail in End Times 343, Your Victory Over Distrust, Part 1, which was posted on September 23rd, 2024. In that podcast, we revealed the purpose of your mental bridge of trust. That is, to eliminate each knowledge and understanding gap within your mind. For in each instance, the spirit of Elohim will fill in the gap for you. Notwithstanding, the spirit will never fill in these gaps in accordance with our will. Trust me, if it were up to many of us, we would never have to wait for Yahuwah to do anything. And all the while, we would never truly know what it means to trust him. Here lies the inflection and the key, my friends. And it is such a crucial lesson as it pertains to trust that I will offer it as an inflection point. This is one I advise you to bookmark and never forget. Anytime you are waiting for the Father to fulfill his will in your life, and there appears to be no spiritual grounds for the time it is taking, it is more than likely because you are being tested. Brothers and sisters, Elohim is testing you to see if you truly do trust him. Here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, many of us claim to trust the Most High, and to some degree, we most certainly do. And yet, you must always remember, you receive no spiritual credit for an incomplete spiritual work. Ergo, it is not enough to trust Yahuwah in part. Brothers and sisters, we must trust in him with all our mind, our will, and our heart. Now, this should be clear by observing the table to the right. By definition, trust is assurance in the integrity and surety of a person or thing based upon limited knowledge. And the primary objective of trust is to have complete confidence in the Father to the point where we follow his will always, specifically when we lack understanding. That's the key, my friends. Trust is having complete confidence in Elohim. The key word is complete, which is why we will not struggle to follow his will, even in those situations when we lack understanding. And do you know why? To wit, do you know the primary spiritual factor that generates the mental bridge of trust in those instances when we don't understand how or when Yahuwah's will should come to pass? If you don't, I'll tell you in the form of an interest point. Although we lack understanding as it pertains to our tests and trials of trust, we will never lack experience. And thus, we must lean upon our experiences with the Most High Elohim and those situations in which we trusted him, for they all ended well and in accordance with his will. And those experiences, my friend, will create a mental bridge of trust, leading us into our future purpose, while serving as a reminder that Yahuwah is always with us. This, my friends, is the power of the primary illustration of trust in our quest. This, my friends, is the role that trust plays in helping you achieve mind regulation. The rock of reliance. Now, the same way the primary illustration of trust is a mental bridge, the primary illustration of reliance, i.e., the critical degree of faith, is a rock. We discussed this matter in End Times 348, Your Victory Over Self-Reliance, which was posted on October 4th, 2024. In that podcast, we revealed the purpose of the rock of reliance. That is, to provide us with a place of refuge when we are being overwhelmed by the enemy, who is working overtime to cause us to lose our hope and or trust in Elohim. Along these lines, the rock of reliance becomes the answer to every test and trial we will ever face, even those which we will encounter once we move beyond the level of faith. To wit, your reliance in the Father becomes the foundation of every victory you will obtain in this quest. This should be clear to see by observing the table to the right. By definition, reliance is having full dependence upon someone or something based on experience, repose of mind upon what is deemed sufficient support or authority. And the primary objective of reliance is to stand upon the promises the Father has given us until they come to fruition. Here lies the key, my friend, vis-a-vis, if we stand upon the promises of Elohim, each one will eventually come to pass. And although he may not come when you want him, he will be there right on time. Numbers 23:19 is revealing El is not a man to lie, nor a son of man to repent. Has he said, and would he not do it? Or spoken, and would not confirm it? Isaiah 55:11 reads, so is my word that goes forth from my mouth. It does not return to me empty, but shall do what I please, and shall certainly accomplish what I sent it for. Brothers and sisters, if you believe this and always remember it, you will have peace of mind. It doesn't matter how long Yahuwah may take to make good on his promise. Trust me, he will be there. And again, he will be there on time. And this, my friends, is the power of the primary illustration of reliance in our quest. This, my friends, is the role that reliance plays in helping you achieve mind regulation. Now, here is the final word. We mastered faith, and now we find we gain the power to free our minds. Brothers and sisters, I have proven to you at the detailed level how faith empowers you to achieve the prized possession of mind regulation. I showed you the powers of your mind barrier of hope, your mental bridge of trust, and your rock of reliance, and how these supplement the great work of your fence of faith. And yet, you will realize none of these if you fail to complete the spiritual work. And thus, I caution you, be not deceived, for you will only reap what you have invested. For now is not the time to become weak. Now is the time to be battle tested. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on all the lessons you have heard this week and ask the Father to give you clarity on anything you are struggling to receive. And if you are led, please feel free to reach out to me. You can fill out a form on our website and let us know what questions you have. And remember, the only question that can truly hurt you is the one you fail to ask. Last but not least, enjoy the upcoming Shabbat and the weekend, and be ready to get back at it next week as we continue to make our calling and election sure in pursuit of the precious and priceless seal of Elohim. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 352, Maintaining Your Victory Over Doubt, Part 2. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 353, Maintaining Your Victory Over Doubt, Part 3. I will post this podcast on Monday, October 14th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.